Going good.
How are you today?
I'm really excited to talk about my book and adventures and
It's great.
all
It's
of
great.
that. Yeah.
Me too. I'm just as excited to do this because I think what you do and what you dedicate your everyday to is something that the world really knows about. And when you do something so important to the world, it's to be shared, and you have to keep it sexy at the same time, or else why are we doing this? So the first thing I want to ask you, Rebecca, is just to introduce yourself a bit and tell Kiss why you're studying relationships in the first place. What took you to this adventure?
Sure. So, my name is Rebekah McClaskey, and I have my master's in counseling psychology. I got it from Naropa, graduated 2011. It's crazy how fast time goes by. So, I've been in private practice for 2 years. And in those 2 years, I've written a book, Breakup Rehab, Start Over Stronger, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But to answer your question, what got me into relationship counseling, I have a really fun kind of story, and it got pointed out to me. So when I was 17, I was in love with this airman, this guy who was in the Air Force. And I was a pastor's daughter as well, so I was really innocent. And so this guy Josh, he used to sneak me on the Air Force base that I live by, and I didn't know anything really about boys, or I mean, I knew I liked them, but I didn't really know much. I wasn't sleeping with anybody and or kissing anybody. So we would go on base, and he would fall asleep because he was exhausted, and then I would sit there and I'd just stare at him. And then he'd take me back home, and I'd listen to terrible country music and write horrible poetry and wonder about the meaning of life. And I told someone the story, and they're like, "Wow, you really put yourself through some weird emotions out of the gate when you were young. You were meant to be a relationship therapist." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. I was meant to be a relationship therapist." So it's sort of something that I would call a calling.
And just how, when you study relationships as opposed to the actual act of, being, giving therapy, what's the difference, I guess? I guess nobody really talks about that, but what did
Hmm.
you get from your studies as opposed to the practice as you are in now?
Hmm. So you're asking how it I guess what I'm understanding you say is how is studying relationship different than necessarily being in a relationship?
Well, you took on the course to be a relationship counselor.
Mm-hmm.
To get there, you had to study a lot of topics. And so there's two parts to your, I guess, your process. Your first process is the studying of everything, and then
Mm-hmm.
bringing it into clarity and bringing that into practice with clients. Now, how is that different? How does that process go, and how do you get to where you are now in your trade?
Sure, that's a great question. So there is an academic sort of reality where I've really spent a decade, quite frankly, immersing myself in my studies and reading some of the greats, which is John Gottman and Esther Perel and David Data. These are all people who have invested a lot of time and energy into studying male and female relationships. And when you're reading them, there's parts that kind of can resonate to your life, like, oh, this is how to communicate better. This is Harville Hendrix is another one. He came up with imago therapy, and it's a way of saying, when you do this, it makes me feel. It's a very structured way of communicating. But when you take it out of the books and put it into the live version, when I see it in my office, I am acutely aware as a therapist that my job is to bring an objective perspective to the table, because um, the people that are coming in, they're so inundated with their process. They're so oh my God, I might have to get divorced. What does that mean for my identity? What does that mean for my wallet? What does it mean for my life? So those academic pieces become very visceral. They become very like experiential. And so going from just reading it in a book to applying it in therapy is that you're essentially helping people structure their lives. And it's a big responsibility, and it's a really big honor to be able to do that.
Definitely. So when you do go, like, so let's just set things. Let's start with the basics. What is a relationship then? Like, what is a relationship? Do we know what a relationship is?
So really, again, so many really good questions. I love it. So, yeah, I mean, as far as relationship goes, we can obviously say there's a spectrum and break them down, because not all relationships are romantic in their nature, meaning that there's like you're connecting through sex and physicality. There's obviously a whole array of relationships. So it's easy to break it down in the Webster's kind of sense and say relationships mean to relate, right? I think that the two things I've noticed in doing this work is relationship can be a philosophical term. It can be abstract. You could, again, go to the dictionary and look up exactly what it means. But at the end of the day, what I've noticed is the relationships we have in our lives either make us more of who we are, like make us more expressive, make us feel free to explore, kind of push our edges a little bit, but in doing so, like build our character, and that can happen by staying in a relationship and eking through the hard stuff, or going through a breakup and dealing with the heartache, and it makes you more of who you are. Or relationships can like have this ability to diminish you, meaning people fake who they are, they get into a persona, they get more addicted to something, they are often in the process of escaping, full of anxiety, thinking about the future, or stuck in the past. So, so relationships, I guess, what I would define it as is your greatest tool of learning.
Interesting. Interesting. And now, and what part of that learning, and if it is learning, how much of that is mental as opposed to chemical, like our body construct? How much is that, and how does that play in part of what we know as a relationship?
Well, it's really good as far as I put this in my book, Breakup Rehab, that a huge part of being human, like being everything we are in a body, spirit and molecules and all of that, is that we're wired for survival. There's the makeup of our bodies, the makeup of our brains, there's a very specific part that's wired for fight, flight, freeze, or faint, or the other F word. Beep. So, normally I wouldn't censor myself, but I feel like it's important to. And so as far as the chemical components, we're talking about adrenaline and cortisol and dopamine and serotonin, and those are a huge part to the way that we are wired, the way that we are made up. So just to break it down again real simply, there's the nature and the nurture, and we're a little bit of both. There's a balance of both. Sometimes there's more of one, than the other. And that really sets us up for how we do relationship.
And why do you think there's not enough knowledge about relationships that's taught from I guess the question to go before this is why is there so much of a struggle around the topic? Why do we struggle? And then what I'm curious about is how come we're not better prepared, which is why you have a wonderful book out, is why are we as people, as a human race that is built on so much relationship, not prepared to deal with this whole process of either going up and down?
Mm. Gosh, we could teach like a whole seminar just just on alone. And I do tackle a lot of that in Breakup Rehab, the book. Just again, I took 12 the traditional 12 steps and rechanged them for relationships. So there's a little bit of these elements and all of it of like, how do we do relationship? Like, how do we get into it? And one of the elements, again, that's in the book and then just also in life in general is, I think that the message is a little bit askew, that relationships are a place to get, like, oh, I'll find my Prince Charming and everything will be better, or I'll find like the girl and that will just, fulfill me. And while you get that in the beginning with romantic relationships, it's like, whoa, I feel so happy and so great. And they're important. It's an absolutely important part. It's not the point. The point is that we're here to give, like our lives. I was really thinking about that because I have a friend who's got teenagers, and I'm kind of watching their interactions, and a lot of what comes across is like, well, what can I get from you? Like, what do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? What about me? What do I get out of it? What about me? So I would say that if you are in a place of saying giving is giving, because you can't give what you don't already have. If you don't have intelligence, you can't give intelligence. If you don't have gratitude, you can't give gratitude. If you don't have love, it's really hard to give love. If you're full of fear, you're going to give off fear, and anxiety and resentment. So the preparation to be in relationship, I think, starts the minute that you understand it's about your unique gifts and talents and how to best them to the world.
And how come we don't, as I mentioned before, how come we so many people don't know that? And why is it that that's just so not clear for many of us?
Mm. Well, the quote goes, and it's not mine, but I'll use it, is that comparison is the thief of all joy. So another big part of being in relationship is figuring out what your culture's social norms are, right? We're not in the Wild West anymore, so you just can't kill your ex. You can't, there's rules. There are rules you have to live by. So that sets us up a little bit for comparison, like, oh, am I following the rules? Am I normal, right? Is what I'm feeling normal? But comparison has a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it protects us and keeps us in that sort of mainstream groove. But on another hand, it can really take us out of our own integrity. It can make us feel like, oh, I should. The classic is, I should be making a lot of money and I should be married to the right person. I should. And some people do a really good job at like pushing themselves into that should and living that like living there and never ever actually asking, like, well, what makes me come alive? Because some people love accounting. Some people love scuba diving. Some people love jumping off mountains and filming it on GoPros. Like, we all have a passion inside of us. And yeah, I feel like I went tangential, so bring me back. Because, yeah.
So let's. I do want to get to the book. One more before this is I
Okay.
talk about keeping it sexy on the blog. So
Yeah.
as we've got off a tangent on how things go wrong and what it's not, how does one keep it sexy in a relationship? What
Mm.
is keeping it sexy in a relationship? Because at the end of the day, there's something that keeps us in wanting it, longing it, going for it. So what is that?
Again, totally. I also want to kind of mention you and I came together because it's such a cute little quick story too.
Good.
So, like back in 2012, I was doing videos with my friend Sherry,
Mhm.
and I kept using the phrase at the end of the video, like "keep it sexy, keep it sexy." And so I like Googled "keep it sexy," and then your blog came up, and I was like, "Shut up! No way!" And then reached out to you. And at the time, I think you were in Canada. And it's just been a privilege to be able to keep in touch with you because, like, again, as we're going to offer this video to the world should know that you're just a powerhouse. You know, you've got so much to offer, and your blog does keep it really sexy. It really makes current and vivacious and so the elements of your writing and what you offer the world, I think, are a real reflection of how to keep things sexy in relationship. So that's part of it. The other part of how to keep things um, like, well, I want to ask you real quick. When you say sexy, what does that mean to you?
Thank you. Well, keeping it sexy for me is keeping it sophisticated,
Hmm.
exciting, because something has to keep your heart ticking, um,
Mm-hmm.
and intelligent because the world is just full of left turns and right turns, and so you have to make decisions. And young because we're all young inside, and we don't want to become too serious. So when I talk about keeping it sexy, that's what it is. It's those four values, and just taking things every day, step by step, but not forgetting to keep it fun. So
That's like I think it's beautiful, and I just wanted to like echo that I can when you get in your head as just as a person, or especially in a relationship, when everything becomes really logical, like what's the practical thing to do, what's the responsible thing to do, and it just sort of stays there, it really robs the rest of our body from participating. And so to keep things sexy in a relationship takes, of course, communication, but just not always from like a logical place. It has to come from the heart and sometimes from your gut. Coming from that place of, I think the word we would use in the field is counseling is like integration. So you're really, you're in a place of really feeling things and being transparent about them. And then do what is fun. Do what is fun. Like if it's not fun, don't do it. Don't lodge yourself in that place. I mean, of course we all have to be responsible and negotiate those avenues, but a relationship that's going to last and go long term, and I'll say I see this in my office a lot, is people who are married but don't have time for each other because they're so flooded by their jobs and their families and by their responsibilities. They forget to have fun. And I just invite everybody who's watching this to just revisit in their minds and in their bodies, like, oh yeah, what is fun? How long has it been since I've had fun? You know, is fun just staying at home and relaxing, or is fun going out and doing something challenging? Like, or is fun being vulnerable enough to say, wow, I really love you, and whatever it is. But keeping it sexy has everything to do with keeping it fun. Yeah.
So I want to get to this book. Tell me about it. Tell me, I read the preface, why you came to do it. You say that you share a lot of your own experiences in it. You didn't find a handbook on how to deal with it. I want to know, you have 12 steps, if you can go quickly overview them and tell me more about that, and which is the hardest one? What is the one that's really people have to work on that we might underestimate?
Hmm. Again, you would think after 6 months of editing this and 2 years of writing it that I would have my 12 steps totally memorized by now, but I don't. So we'll definitely, yeah, we'll definitely add a link below, like including all of them. But I would say that step one, forgiveness, is I think one of the most challenging steps in after a breakup, because forgiveness is just not a one-way thing. It's forgiveness for yourself, saying like, I really did try my best. Because after a breakup, the first thing that happens is the flooding of what ifs. I could have done this differently. I should have said this differently. If only we had this one more talk. Maybe I could have been prettier. Maybe I should have been younger. Sometimes, like, how could they move on faster than me? So lots and lots and lots of forgiveness, I would say, is the most challenging part of going through a breakup. What else I would say about that, and I say it in the book, is I define forgiveness as two different things. The first is not holding yourself hostage or the other person hostage to the past. So that really, really means that you can certainly look back and review it and say, wow, I made some choices that I may not make again. But then you let that go. You don't, you sort of release that to the universe, which is huge. Surrender is huge, being like, nah, give it up. And then the second part of forgiveness is oftentimes what happens to you, what you think, oh, they did that to me, come you, meaning that the way that you behaved or the words that you spoke actually created your reality, and the person that you were in relationship was actually mirroring that back to you. It's complicated stuff. Like being in a relationship, complicated. Getting out of a relationship, complicated. Living your life as a single person, complicated.
And do you think we will ever master it, or do we always have to continue learning?
There's a lot of books on mastery. I know Tony Robbins, the world-renowned motivational speaker, talks about it. And no, he's the person who wrote The Alchemist. There's The Mastery of Love, and I forget the author of that. He also wrote The Four Agreements. Mm-hmm. So there's this concept of mastery, right? It's out there in the world, like that somehow we can go through experiences enough to sort of become adept at them. But to do that, you have to learn. You have to learn. You have to go through both the academic gathering of knowledge and the physical application of it so that you can become a master. I think the simplest way to become a master is, and I'm going to rip off Tony Robbins when I say this, is there's three types of people when we start out a venture, right? So just pretend this venture is getting in a relationship. You're like, oh, that person's so good looking, or oh, they have a lot of money, or oh, there's just something spiritual about them. I feel like we've known each other before. The connection that is undeniable, whatever gets you going. There's three types of people. There's the dabblers, the stress achievers, and then the people who hit mastery. So people who dabble are sort of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, oh, I'll try this till it gets hard, and then they stop. Then they're like, forget it, I'm out of here. And that's fine, that's one type. Then there's the people that are the stress achievers that are like, oh, it's hard, I hit the hard place, but I'll stay in it, but I'll stay totally stressed out, and I'll just go through random tantrums and freak out about it, and eventually find a solution. But masters, according to Tony Robbins, they go up, they start a relationship and they go, oh, we hit something hard. They're like, that's to be expected, duh. We're going to hit the power struggle part of the relationship. And when we do that, we're going to reach out to people who have been there before. So that's the time to get therapy, to buy my book, Breakup Rehab, like to go through the steps, to go through introspection, to say, like, we hit this plateau, let's reach out to people who have been here before. Maybe it's people who've been married and have stayed married for a long time. Maybe it's your clergy or a counselor. But when you hit that plateau, that hard part, masters seek help. And that's how you actually really manage life.
And I can assume that throughout this process of mastery or being in a relationship, in and out, and is pleasure and pain.
Mm-hmm.
And how much of that, we have necessary, I think you mentioned you have necessary pain. And if we feel pleasure, we have pain. And from that, there's also fear and excitement and all those emotions. How does one manage those unlogicals in this process?
The dynamics of emotions. Again, seminar number 2. Because these are rich topics, right? And they are, and so again, back in the book, towards like the middle of it, I think probably around step 7, I do talk about this. I say, so much, and there's a whole genre of psychology called object relations, meaning so much of what motivates us is a gravitation towards pleasure and an avoidance of pain. Like, you watch people who have been hurt get back into a relationship and they're a little skittish. They're a little like, I don't know if I can trust you. This is a slow process. I'm not sure. Or you see people who just get into a relationship and they just sleep with somebody and they're really promiscuous because their motivation is to go for the pleasure principle as fast as possible and then to maybe bury the pain later. My ex-boyfriend. So I would say that it's a huge factor in how we do relationships. Is this pleasurable, or is this going to cause me more pain? And the thing that Breakup Rehab teaches, this is such, I think, a fundamental principle that gets left out of a lot of breakup books, is how to take what is painful, the loss of your relationship, and how to make that an alchemical process and turn it into something that provides you more strength and clarity and direction and a better sense of who you are. So that even if you go back to that relationship, even if you say, let's try again, that you're not trying again from the exact same space. You're trying again from a place of awareness about who you are and what motivates you. And if you don't go back to the old relationship and you open yourself up to something else, that when that something else shows up, again, you have more awareness of what motivates you. And it's I think, a fundamental component of the book that really is both comforting and gives people clear direction on how to navigate not being in a relationship.
Do you think there's anyone there out there in the world who doesn't reflect on a relationship? Is this like really something standard in our human psyche? Or
If there are people that don't do any like introspection at all, yeah.
are there people? Do we all do it?
Uh,
What's the audience? Like who are we? Like in this audience
right.
for relationships?
Well, I'll answer that in two different ways. So, just the human audience, I think at different times in our life, awareness is inevitable. And the reason that I say that is because I've watched enough things like Intervention, which is a show on HBO of people who've been using drugs and eventually they wake up to they can't do that anymore or it's going to kill them. I think awareness is available for us all the time, but the events or circumstances in our life, they're open us up to it or keep us numb. So another way of saying this is we change for two reasons. One, we've gotten enough knowledge that we wanted to get to be able to make the change, to make the leap, right? This is why people go to college, get their master's, get vocational training, because they want to get enough knowledge to be able to then turn it into action and go the direction they want to go. The other reason people change is they're so hurt that they have to, right? Because if they just dwell in that hurt, then it just is crippling. It's depressing, and that level of hurt, I think you can't. I've watched it time and time again. You can't do anything but be introspective, but have a moment of like, why did this happen to me? How did this happen to me? How can I prevent it from happening again? And how can I then translate this to being stronger to move forward? So specific to your question, I think over a lifetime, over a lifespan of at least 20 years of living, there's going to be moments of introspection. The difference is if people make it you can make introspection a habit, or you can make numbing out and escaping a habit, and those are two different worlds. Yeah.
What do you think of all these tools like Tinder, Grindr, dating apps? How is that facilitating us? And how much of this how much of everything is just luck and nothing really can be done?
To this, I refer to Alan Watts, who is a great philosopher, and he really is a little bit more of a proponent of that there's not a lot of meaning in things except for the meaning we give to things. So when it comes to these dating apps, I think they, as business plans, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant because what they're fueled on is everybody's innate need for connection. If you watch the Discovery Channel, they'll say we're wired as social beings. To take that one further, one of man's greatest punishments is to be put into solitary confinement, devoid of connection. So what I think of these apps is they're really feeding on everybody's need to be connected, to have this sense of being understood, and in order to be understood, we need to be in relationship with another person, and of course, specific. Let's talk about sex. That's a huge, huge part of it. And And again, seminar number 3. It was again a huge topic of like, why do we have sex? There's people that just do it for the pleasure. There's people who do it for the connection. There's people who do it for spiritual reasons. There's people who want to configure it into monogamy. There's people who want to configure it into multiple partners. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with these dating apps, especially after getting out of a relationship, I see people get out of a relationship and immediately they're on like Match.com or OkCupid or any of these, being like, who can I find next? Where's my rebound relationship? Because feeling separate, like feeling like I'm the only one going through this, is really painful. Yeah.
So what is the opposite of feeling painful? What do you define as this pleasure of achieving this thing, relationship? We talk about how much it hurts, but what is it that makes it beautiful?
So again, I really would say that like going through Breakup Rehab and going through the 12 steps of it, is there's a journey in the book that starts at that place of like, ouch, this really hurt. I'm so sorry. Even the book cover reflects sort of that the grimness that we feel when we break up. But the beauty at the end of it is that that when you're in a healthy relationship, when you are in a healthy space in your life, that there's a lightness to it, right? So inspiration comes easily, and inspiration really means to be in spirit, to be to have those moments of just connection, and they don't necessarily rely on another human being, right? That's inspiration. Inspiration can certainly come from like witnessing somebody else do something, and you're like, wow, I'm gonna write about that, or I'm gonna paint that, or I'm gonna get on stage and tell a story about that, or so healthy relationship furthers connection. That's the beauty of it, right? And that's why breakup, when we feel separate, we feel like, oh gosh, I lost love, feels awful, because that's not what we want. So if you take that to the next level, like fostering connection means that thing inside of you, that talent, that skill, that curiosity, that thing. Eric Thomas, who's a motivational speaker too, he says your why, the reason why you get up and get out of bed in the morning. Like if you find your why, you won't sleep in. If you find your why, you're going to be driven to like do whatever it takes, come hell or high water, come like lots of money or no money, to make sure that you can express this thing inside of you. And healthy relationship like furthers that expression. If you think about the people that help like write for Kis, or the connected relationships you make that like fuel the thing where you're like, wow, I started with this idea and then it became this thing. That is sort of the message I give in Breakup Rehab is, you may start off in a relationship and say, this is the thing that's going to make me happy, and this is the thing that's going to give me security, and this is the thing that's really going to provide fulfillment for my life. And it may be the thing. It might be that for a while, but it only stays that thing if you can continue to grow and amplify that calling inside of you. And if you can't do that, if you are shutting down and you're not giving your gift to the world, like your relationship will die and your soul will die. So again, I emphasize relationship rehab. Sorry, that's a different book. Breakup Rehab is all about the journey. From like, this sucks, to like, I can totally express myself how I want to. How exciting. Yeah, so that's I don't know. Now I really feel like a seminar. I feel like I could get a black choir behind me and be like, hallelujah.
It's great feeling. Now, I guess about the journey. What's next for you, Rebekah? What do you do? Like, how is the next? What are your next steps? And how are you going to write more books? And I know you're on Elephant Journal. You've got wonderful articles that you write and contribute to all the time. So tell me more. What's that?
The exciting adventure that is me, I guess you could say, is that I recently moved my office from a small town in Colorado to a bigger town, Denver, which is, the hub. And I'm just continuing to build up my client base and offer individual sessions for people so that they can take their life experience and like make it into something that provides clarity, direction, and purpose, and they can have healthy relationships. Totally believe in true love. So that's on a professional level. Of course, I'm going to continue to promote Breakup Rehab and the book, and there's lots of exciting things coming from that. I'm offering a program called Meditations. It's going to be 21 days of motivation and meditation combined together in a downloadable audio format. So that's coming. And whatever other inspirations arrive that I can like really put my energy behind, I'm just in a huge creative place in my life right now, which is exciting. And, this will date this a little bit, but I'm turning 35 this Friday on the 23rd of January. Like, it's happening. And yeah. And so like I said, in my professional life, there's this huge ball of creation happening and just really trying to reach the world, like reach as many people who can connect with the message of like real honesty. I'm just not BSing people. I like to really get to the point and get to the nitty-gritty so that they can move forward. And I'm funny sometimes. So that's the professional side of things. On the personal side of things, I will say it took 3 breakups to write the book and 2 years to do it. So after a decade of dating, I'm sort of in this place where I'm just taking a step back and taking a personal breath and going through that like death and rebirth cycle, so that when I meet the next person who connects with me, I can just be really present with that. So in my personal life, I am continuing to grow, and I would say all of it's really exciting. And so finally the next step is just, I think, staying open to what's possible.
Thank you, Rebekah. Thank you. I think you have a beautiful message and a great offer to the world, and I appreciate you coming on Keep It Sexy.
Yeah, thanks so much for interviewing me. I'm so excited too to just share this and to share your message too of Keep It Sexy, because obviously that's really important as well.
Yes. Is there any last thing that I didn't ask you before you let to go?
I will just add at the end of this broadcast, the best way to connect with me is through my website, transformnowcounseling.com. And I also have my Facebook page, transformnowcounseling.com. And then there's a whole other sort of area for Breakup Rehab. So just stay in touch if people out there who are going through a breakup and feeling confused and they want to connect with me. I do Skype calls, I do phone sessions, and then if you're in the Denver metro area, I do one-on-one counseling as well. So there's lots of ways to get support so that you can find freedom from heartbreak and truly start over stronger.
Thank you so much, Rebekah.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, darling.